Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew, the 16th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, but others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." Jesus said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." And then he sternly ordered the disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
You may be seated. Okay, I would like you to try and figure out who I am talking about when I give you these clues. On Jesus' last night in the garden, this man pulled out his sword and was told to put it away. A little later, around the fire, this man denied that he ever knew the man. This man's mother-in-law was healed by Jesus in the Gospel of Luke. And Jesus used this man's boat to catch a whole bunch of fish. This man had breakfast on the beach with the risen Jesus. Do you know who I'm talking about? One more. This man stepped out of the boat and onto the water in a storm, but in a moment, this man sank down in the waves. We just had that reading, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago? In today's story, we have this man's maybe brightest life moment. This man says with confidence, "Jesus, I know who you are. You are the Son of the living God." You are right. I am referring to Simon Peter, the original rock. And I am fairly sure that he did not have the physique of the one we know as the movie star rock. You know what he looks like, right? In this year of Matthew, this reading includes a good example of what is known as the Messianic secret. The gospel writers have Jesus using an evangelism ploy when Jesus tells the disciples, "Shh, don't tell anyone that you know who I am." You see that at the end of the gospel reading. Keep it a secret. Shh. That's supposed to just make you tell it all the more, right? They do this in order to mask Jesus' Messiah identity from the Pharisees. And the office of the keys is given to Simon Peter in this passage, as well as this shows us the power of the practice of confession and forgiveness as a part of the office of pastor. Whatever is bound on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever is loosed will be loosed. That's the power of the confessional, whether private or corporate, that carries through all these years later. This past Friday, I had lunch with a lax Lutheran who is disgusted with organized religion because his congregation is right now going through a pastoral crisis. Jim is a mature, lifelong believer. He desired to have a conversation with what he called a sage theologian. Not that I am a sage or anything, but I am friends with Jim. Our relationship was deepened 2 summers ago on a mission trip. Together we went with a group of other Berks County Lutherans. We repaired the roofs of 3 houses down in Puerto Rico. And if you stand on a hot roof all day with someone, you get to know them pretty well. Jim is a man of faith, and Jim needed to have a deeper conversation about congregational life. I share that story with you to demonstrate the term known as the power of the keys, the power of the office of pastor, the trust that's involved there. Really, this gospel reading begs each reader and each of us to ask ourselves the question, who is this guy, Jesus? And what does he mean for me in my life? What does he mean for you in your life? For all of us in our life together as the church. In this country, we tend to believe that if you work hard, you can fulfill your desires. Simon Peter worked hard in his life to be a faithful follower of Jesus. You are aware that he is considered, in fact, to be the first pope of the church. Speaking of working hard, people still move to this country from all over the world because they know that hard work can be rewarded with a good life because of the incredible opportunities that we have here in our country. We have come to believe that all is possible with enough perseverance. But it is no surprise that this ideology, this way of thinking, can creep into our own theology and our beliefs. We believe so much in individual achievement that we might begin to think that we are the ones who can find our way to God. If we work hard enough, we will find real life and meaning and purpose, which is another way of saying we can become our own saviors. In this scenario, Jesus doesn't save, but we do. By our own work, by our own effort. Somehow we can merit salvation. This is clearly a first commandment violation. Just read Luther's catechism. Please don't miss that this is a key Luther Reformation theological point. But you and I know that if it comes down to what we do, we will always fall short. If it comes down to what our community does, it will always fall short. We make lousy saviors. We can't save ourselves. Paul writes over and over and over again in Romans and elsewhere that God's grace is given to us freely, to all of us, as a gift. Today, Paul writes in Romans chapter 12 that we are to present our bodies as, what did he call his followers in the reading today? What was it? He called his followers living sacrifices, and that we do not conform to this world, but are transformed in our baptism to be more in touch with the will of God. We are made into something different in our baptism. We are to think differently than the world does. We are to use our gifts in God's service. We are one body, but with many members and many different gifts. We are called into the beloved community to serve all God's people and to encourage all of God's people to serve in that way. The first congregation that I served as an ordained pastor in 1986 was Christ Lutheran Church in Roanoke, Virginia, located right in the center of that broad valley, a beautiful place. The church building is about 100 years old, and it is made of green granite. The only other structures in southwest Virginia made of this green granite were the road overpasses on the Blue Ridge Parkway. Maybe you have traveled on the Blue Ridge Parkway and seen them. So when the Fellowship Hall addition was added on to Christ Lutheran Church in the mid-1970s, they had to petition the state of Virginia to reopen the quarry to get the same stone so that the addition would match the rest of the church. It took a couple of years to petition the state of Virginia to do this. I thought of this when I read the words from Isaiah today in our first reading. Isaiah says that God offers comfort to the people of Zion. The people of Zion, like you all gathered here, and the people who will gather at Zion, the mountain of God, Jerusalem. What does Isaiah say? Look to the rock from which you were hewn, and to the quarry from which you were dug. God will comfort all her waste places. Wilderness will be turned into the Garden of Eden. God's teachings will go out. God's justice for a light to the peoples. God reigns, Isaiah says. God is in charge of salvation forever. God's deliverance will never end. The earth will wear out like a favorite old t-shirt, if you will, after too many washings. It is God who will deliver the Israelites. It is God who saves them. It is God who rescues them. Please remember, my faithful friends, God says, like Isaiah said, for my mighty arm they hope. May our hope be in the Lord of heaven and earth, this day and each day. Amen.